y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Let It Be the Podcast. I know I say every week that this is a special episode, but this episode is actually very near and dear to my heart. It's very special. With me, I have some special guests, family of Cameron Lamb. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself, but I just want to start off by saying, like, it is an honor. And I'm just grateful that y'all trust me enough to have the conversation and to be able to share the legacy of who Cameron Lamb actually is, who he was. And I'm just grateful that y'all would join me on Let It Be the Podcast. So I guess I'll start off. I'm going to let y'all introduce yourself, whoever wants to start off.
My name is Lori Bay, and I am the mother of Cameron Lamb.
My name is Vanessa Gray, and I'm a sister of CP.
My name is Shalise, and I am the sister of CD. I'm his sister.
My name is Akil Bay. I'm a stepfather of Cameron Lamb.
Okay. So Cameron, for people who don't know, Cameron was my first love. I met Cameron when I think I was like 14 or 15 years old. I remember I met him in summer school. He was throwing the football in the lunchroom. That's how I was introduced to him. And we just became really cool. And we dated freshman year of high school, and we remained friends ever since then. Cameron was like somebody very close to me up until his passing. So I've known y'all. Y'all seen me in different seasons of my life. When I was young, you know, I would always try to make sure that I could come and see you when I could, visit in the town after I left to go away to school. But this conversation is very near and dear to me because I want to be able to share, like let Cameron be human and not what the media has tried to portray him to be, you know, because we know and love Cameron and we know who Cameron is, we know what type of person that Cameron was. And so I guess I want to start off by whoever wants to start, because like, what's like one of your favorite memories to you? One of your favorite memories about Cameron, or something that you can just say that you always think about that'll make you smile.
All right, I'll go ahead on and start, Brianna. But first of all, on behalf of our family, we just want to thank you for using your platform, Let It Be, to allow us to tell Cameron Lamb, known as CD's story. So one of my favorite, and I kind of feel like it's kind of appropriate now because we're getting ready to approach the holidays, was when he was a little boy, and I would say that he probably was no more than 3 years old because he hadn't started school. And we had went to the store, went home. I started wrapping Christmas presents. Well, this time, I don't know if you can remember this very popular toy at the time, but it was called Give a Pet. And the girls were really into it. They wanted to give a pet. So I told CD, I said, you better make sure that you don't tell them, because he could see all of the gifts. I said, please do not tell them what, I'm getting them, what I'm wrapping. So he's like, okay, Mama. So the girls come home, then later on we're sitting at the table and we're eating. And CD was like, Mama told me to not tell y'all she popped out to get the pet. And he knew that he had messed up. He knew, he thought about it as soon as he said it, like, oh my God, I wasn't supposed to say that. So that was one of my favorite memories of him, but I do have many, of course, that I could have said.
Yeah. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I lived in Columbia, Missouri for a few years, and one time I drove up to visit, and I called CD, and he came to pick me up, and we just was driving around all day, and we went to get something to eat, and went to visit a few people, but then we just sat in the car for a while outside of Mama's house. And we were talking about how family while we're still here, we need to love upon each other and just while we're still here because we never know what our last day on this earth is. And we told each other we loved each other a lot and gave each other a lot of hugs. And we had took a picture, which I'm gonna send it to you. And that's something that it's one of my favorite memories because I think it is kind of fitting for the situation, just losing him like that. So that's one I think about.
Well, I have a lot of memories with City, but I'll say the thing that I remember most about him was his laugh. And he just had a laugh like no other. And I remember it was maybe like some months before he passed away. I'm like, come on, y'all, we need to go out. We need to do a cousins thing and we need to go out somewhere. And so I picked a comedy show and we all went to the comedy show. Y'all drove out to the Empire. And just, I can still like see him like laughing and stuff. And that's just something that I always remember his laugh. It's also this video that he had with Tyler. You can't see his face or anything, but you can just hear him laughing. And I watch that video a lot, just so I can hear.
I remember that video. What about you, Mr. Akil?
He always kept everybody laughing. And a lot of the good memories that I have with him is just us not even doing nothing, just sitting around talking and laughing and being amongst all of the cousins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a sense of humor that he didn't realize he had. And you could just listen to him just say something and it was funny. I can remember, and you remember as well, all of the time that he spent with his grandpa and how Daddy would always work them really hard. I can remember they were cutting the light on the end of the block, 60th and 10th. He said, Mama, he said, me and Tommy was out there cutting the grass, and he said there was like a little piece of paper that was on the ground, and he said they were actually trying to cover it up with grass. And he said, Daddy said, hey, it's a piece of paper over there. But see, these things that was so funny, he said, how come old people can't hear, but they can see what it is? That's really wild.
Yes.
Had a hard time here. So they were really trying hard to hide. And he said,
Oh.
right, he said that messed him up. Like, and I just thought that was so funny. But not only was CD comical, but he got a kick out of just hearing someone else, like, and he would just get so caught up in laughter that you could not understand what he was trying to tell you because that situation that he was trying to tell you about was so funny. You would just have to wait until he got it all out. But I want my husband to hear his still.
Well, the one that I laugh about, and I tell my wife about all the time, he didn't laugh about it. He got mad at it. We had Sincere one evening, and CD was supposed to come get him at a certain time, and he didn't. And when he did come and get him, I told CD, I said, your son gonna call me daddy before you talking about somebody that got mad.
Oh.
CD got mad. And it took a while before he left that baby with me. So he was gonna make sure that he called me daddy. But it did take the entirely different interests in them children, and he kept up with him a great deal. And he told me, no, now my son ain't gonna call you no daddy. I laugh about that too.
Cameron, I always called him Cameron City. He was hilarious to me. One of my favorite memories, and I can't get in trouble because I'm a grown up now, but I wanted to see him so bad. So I took my oh gosh, she gonna see this. And like, you did what? I took her car, right? And I came and picked him up, and I was a teenager, like I had a driver's license, but we was driving around just joyriding, and I went into a cul-de-sac, and I backed into somebody's car, a Mustang, and I panicked. And he's in the car like, Brianna, what are you doing? Oh my God. So I burned out this neighborhood, and it was the biggest dent on the back of my grandma's car. And so we pull over to Mr. Petrie's house, and we pull over, and he tore the bumper off the car and trying to hammer it out so I didn't get in trouble. It worked. She gonna find out watching this interview. It worked. But that was one of my favorite memories of him, because he always was like there to help me if I done did something. I'm clumsy and not paying attention. So that's kind of like just, I think about that often. You know. Yeah, he was something. So, and the thing about Cameron, we remained friends. Like, we were teenagers when we were dating, but I've always like valued y'all's relationship just with me, and the way y'all loved on me and accepted me, and vice versa. Like, one of my mom's favorite memories that she likes to share about Cameron is we had a storm, and a tree broke down. A tree fell in the back of our home, and I told him about it, and we went to school, or we went somewhere. And by the time we got back home, him and his grandfather had came and cut up the wood and placed it alongside of the fence. So Cameron was all I knew I could depend on him and count on him to like just look out. That's just who he was as a person, even as a young teenager. That's something that I know he got a lot of that from his grandfather as well. Like, I remember he used to hate cutting that lot. Yeah, he used to be. I remembered all of those stories with him going and cutting that lot. He would be so frustrated, like, I can't do this because my grandpa got me done. He used to be so upset. I remember it. Yeah.
But not only that, but last with the Spina Neighborhood Association, but CD worked diligently at the church. You know, that was something that he and Daddy did almost on a pretty much a weekly basis. Yeah. They would bring the church grass as well.
So I guess from what, we all know and love Cameron for just his heart, his laughter. He really was hilarious. But I want to talk about just like growing up, what kind of person was he outside of like what the public might know about him? Could you just tell us some characteristics of Cameron, like his upbringing, how he things that he enjoyed doing?
Well, I will start with saying that, you know, he was a challenge as a little boy. But I say that he was a challenge because he was spoiled. Now, I've said many of times that, you know, CD was, you know, my youngest, but he was my only son. And there was a gap in between their age, like 6-7 year difference between their age. So he was when I say spoiled, he was just very spoiled. He was one that if he, you know, asked you to do something, if he wanted some rice, you know, his thing was he expected you to give him, you know, what he wanted, because not only was he spoiled by us, but he was spoiled by his Uncle Julius and his auntie Gail, and his aunt Gail never had kids, so she really looked at him as a son, and I think she kind of spoiled him more so on a level to where he could get what he wanted out of her, and then he would come home to me and say, like, make me some rice or something. I'm like, this might work for auntie Gail, but it don't work for Mama. But what I will say was that, you know, he was very loving. He was real smart, like CD.
Yes.
And I think that it has a lot to do with him having older siblings and his cousins. Everyone was older than him. And there were things that I thought that I was going to have problems with as far as his growth, and things that, you know, I would know that I was going to have to work with him with potty training, for instance. I thought potty training was going to be very complicated for me, you know, trying to potty train a boy. But I'm telling you, it was easy because he wanted to do things the big boy way, because he was around older kids that were going to the restroom, or even, his dad, or, he could see the big boy way to do it, and that's how he wanted to do it. But he was smart. He had an ego. He was one that he loved to use his hands to build. In fact, when I would take him to the store, the dollar store, you know how a lot of kids like to get the little cars, the already built cars. He would always grab the little pack that you would have to assemble. He would want to assemble the hood, the wheels, and it was all detached, and he put it together. And as he got older, there were other things that he would do. He would put together like my bookcases or end tables. And I used to tell my son, I told him as a little boy that I felt like when he grew up that he would be a good auto mechanic because he was so good with his hands. I always felt like in my heart as a little boy that he had that ability to build, and it was a vehicle that I always told him that I felt he would be good at. So when he, like right before his death and he found his niche in life, it was something to me that's what his passion would be, repairing cars and then to take it, to another level because he loved it so much. He got his Facebook page, and I love the fact that he liked to demonstrate to people. He loved to show the tools that he was using, what he was actually doing, and that was a way. And he wanted to interact with whoever was on that Facebook Live video with them. He wanted to interact with them, wanted them to ask questions. He would, ask questions, but for the most part, he wanted to share, his knowledge and even things that he was learning. And he always said, if I can't do it, then I know someone that can, or I will. He was willing to go and learn and research to do whatever it was or make whatever repair that he needed to make. But he was just a really smart, observant, young man, and he loved sports. He loved football, in school. He always wanted to, that was his desire one day, become a professional football player. And even though that did not happen, it did not change his love for the game, and he loved the Kansas City Chiefs. And I just hate that, he's not here to be able to kind of mentor his sons into the same love of sport because Cameron Jr. is really kind of falling into his dad's footsteps with the love of football.
Okay.
But I'm going to let them share.
Growing up, I remember when we first saw CD for the first time, and I was just like so in love with him. I thought he was just so cute, and I remember me and Shalice used to fight over him all the time. Like we thought he was our baby. But I would say when he turned 3, that's when he became the annoying little brother. And we would just always fight and get into it about something, but then we would make up and it was always love. And it was like that up until I'd say he was 12 when he started getting interested in girls. But CD has always been an old soul too. Like he loved old school music, even when he was a little boy. So I just have a lot of memories of him. I'm sorry, I'm kind of bored. I have a lot of memories of him singing because he loved music. He loved riding around. You
Yeah, I get back off of this. But growing up, I just remember him being very annoying. And I remember we would fight all the time. And he would just do like little stuff. It's like if it was a picture in a dictionary of annoying little brother, his picture would definitely be in there. But as he got older and stuff, uh, our relationship kind of changed a little. It changed once he started getting older and a little bit more mature, when we was able to talk about different things.
And he loved y'all. I promise you. That was one of my favorite things that I remember just about our childhood, just growing up. I promise, he loved y'all. He thought that y'all was so hilarious, and I love the dynamic when he would annoy y'all and get together, especially you, Shalice. Like I remember those moments. He loved y'all. So you kind of mentioned something, Miss Lori. Cameron liking to work with his hands. Can you tell me
Yeah.
about Cam's gifted hands? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, Ken's gifted hands was inspired by a tattoo. So, he knew that his hands were gifted, and again, he had found his niche in life for repairing cars. So he just grouped that together, and he named his business Cam's Gifted Hands.
Okay. And so with that, I know he would go live a lot on Facebook. A lot of people have stories about things that he's done if they needed their brakes repaired or something was going on, and he would go and help work on people's cars. And so that was a passion that he had, and he continued to kind of grow up until his passing. So Cam's gifted hands was inspired. I know he would go live a lot and help people. Mr. Akil, what did you have to say about him using his hands in his car mobile service that he started?
Well, you have to emphasize that Kevin was anybody. He had five people stranded on the freeway. And what he would do is simply give some assistance. Even if he had children with he was so helpful in us around the house because I'm not no jitterbug. And he would come around and help us do things, straighten out the garages and have an issue with my vehicle. Anything of that nature. But it's as if you was no stranger to him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if something was happening to you out on that freeway, and your car was down and CD passed you, CD was coming back to find out if he could be of assistance to you. So, and it was like that. He was so protective of the sisters and his mother. When I came on the scene, he had to check me out. It ain't like me getting on that, immediately. He wanted to make sure I wasn't trying to play his mom. So, and his sisters, if he found out his sisters, he had got in distress. He do his utmost to get there. So Cat had a giant, on the side, but folks, he didn't know.
And even further than his gifted hands outside of the car repairs, he used his gifted hands a lot to help assist people move. And a lot of times people would just call him at a moment's notice, like needing to move from an apartment or to move from their homes or something like that. But he was always so good with making himself available. And like my husband said, he helped, assist us around the house. Because over the years, we collect so much, and it's just organized and just became not a priority in our garage. And he was just so good to where he could come over, take everything out, and he would put it back in, but it would look so neat because he had that eye for knowing how to put something together and make it look neat, and it could still be a lot, but by the time he finished and he put it together, it was just neat and it was organized.
He definitely had a giving heart, and he was a servant's heart. That's one of my favorite things that I've always loved about him. Even up and through his adulthood, he's always been that way. So, But I know we keep mentioning we talking about Cameron in a past tense. So if you don't mind sharing what happened to Cameron? Why was he murdered? What happened? What's the story behind, like, how did this happen?
That morning, CD and a young lady that he was seeing had a few words. All right, she was getting her belongings and leaving out of the house. They had a few words. She went down the street and it seemed like she was doing something to his truck. He ran down into his truck, and as she took off, he took off behind her in the truck. So he raced behind her in the truck on the street for a couple of minutes. And he came to his senses and discontinued it and came back to the house. And so he backed into the driveway. Uh, when this thing was happening out on the street, a helicopter happened to see him going at, they call it excessive speed. So they radioed it in. But then all of a sudden, when he broke it off, the helicopter told him, well, it's not happening no more. Everything seemed all right. So he came to the house. And as he backed in his driveway, the other officers, a couple more officers, they had heard about the red truck. So as he backing around, to get into his garage, the officer pulled up, drew his gun, and went around on one side. Another officer came up, and within 9 seconds from him getting out of his car and knocking down the fence or whatever, they ambushed him and shot him. Then Devalkenaere didn't want to shot him, but the officer that was right next to CD didn't do nothing. That officer had to be shot himself. And now,
Why did he not do anything?
because CD wasn't a threat.
Small did not do anything because he always had CD. He had sight on him. He had sight of his hand. I guess he had ordered for CD to put his hands up. He knew that his hands was up. He had even made a statement about that immediately after Devalkenaere, I guess within a matter of a couple hours. He had went and made a statement that no, I could see his hands was up. So, for the most part, he should still be here.
They tried to set the scene and make it seem like he had a weapon and he wasn't obeying police commands. And they said so many things. I have a part of it. Had time for me to just read the things that the appeal court. The appeal court stated that they was wrong about him, what they lied about. It's like 15 different things that they said CD was doing, and the courts found it out. Not only did he got indicted by a judge and Diamond Party, they tried to throw the case out before the judge said no. He decided that he wanted to have a bench trial. The judge found him guilty. He decided that he wanted to appeal. 3 appeal court judges confirmed they upheld the conviction. It wasn't no split decision. It was a unanimous decision. Now, if CD didn't deserve to lose his life over something like CD was the only one that regained his senses and came to his senses because he went home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like he raced home, raced down the street, and backed in the driveway real fast. He did it slow. It was so messed up. The judge went out to the place and said, "Nowhere in the world this happened." The way the police said.
So not only that, at the time of the shooting, CD was making a phone call. He made a phone call. There was audio. And see, a lot of people really don't know that there was a recording of, like, when you hear the audio, and we have it now, but you can hear the last pop from where he shot my son. And then you could hear Devalkenaere yelling, and I'm not going to say the profanity word, but he's yelling at my son, "Keep your effing hands up. Keep your effing hands up," which let me know when I listen to the audio, and I'll send it to you if you want to hear it. But it lets me know when I listen to the audio that my son was complying with what swung, the first detective told him. He told him to put his hands up. Now, if my son had a gun in his hand, as Devalkenaere tried to get people to believe, and he tried to stick with that story that he pointed this gun. If my son had a gun in his hand, why are you demanding that he keep his effing hands up? Why are you not saying drop the gun?
Mm-hmm.
Drop the gun, because you gotta make some things make sense to me. And that did not make sense. If he has a gun, to me it would have made sense for you to say drop the gun and not keep your effing hands up.
Exactly. Mr. Q, did you want to read something in the article that you mentioned?
Sure. Okay. Now this is the appeal court's findings. All right? And this is why they upheld that conviction. You see, as the appeal court today affirmed the defendant's conviction and found the victim, who was shooting, was not in possession of a gun at the time of the shooting. They likely had a cell phone in his hand, not a gun, when he was killed. Evidence that he was making a call. A recorded message captured the final shots being fired. And when he described Lamb's gun was on the steps in the basement, Lamb had no opportunity to retrieve the gun. First officers on the scene did not see the gun in Lamb's hand or on the floor near his truck. Got come up open. The defendant made a false statement at the scene immediately after the shooting, claiming when we arrived here, the lady was telling us that the Mustang had come over here prior with guns. And that's what led to the pursuit. But neither the partner nor the defendant received such information. In addition, he had no information prior to arriving at the scene about any guns being involved in this incident. Responding officers never saw anything indicating that guns were involved or never reported seeing the guns. Said the defendant admitted that his statement that a witness told him about guns prior to the shooting was wrong. The victim was not a threat to either the defendant or his partner. His partner stated prior to the defendant's claim that he saw a gun. He did not feel threatened. He saw no gun. He did not feel threatened. The defendant's partner never saw a gun and never supported that version of the encounter. He did see victim's left hand and there was no gun in it. The victim was not being chased by police. The trial record also showed that the victim was not being arrested for any crime, no probable cause to believe anything other than misdemeanor traffic offenses that had ended. Only probable cause was for a traffic offense. No probable cause for any violent offense. And that 2 walk later. The victim was not a threat to either the defendant or his partner. His partner stated that prior to the defendant's claim that he saw a gun, he did not feel threatened. The defendant's partner never saw a gun and never supported that version of the encounter. He did see the victim's left hand and there was no gun in it. The victim had bullets in his pocket at the morgue, but not at the crime scene. Now, and the judge, there's a couple of things to say, but those were the findings of the appeal court, and they show where 90% of the stuff they said was a lie. They planted bullets in his pocket. He didn't have no gun. Swarm seen his hands. He didn't feel threatened. You know, and the judge, if you go on YouTube and look it up, the judge said there ain't no way that he was going back there to protect his partner. They violated his Fourth Amendment because they had no probable cause going to the property. There was no mention of him doing no more than going fast down the street.
That's it. And another thing that I feel that it's important for your listeners to know is that CD was right-handed. So they said that he had the gun and he was pointing the gun at his left hand. And we all know that CD had damage to his left hand. He would not have been able to utilize his left hand to shoot anyone. You know, that was not true. It was not true at all.
So with Eric Devalkenaere, so what has happened? What happened as a result after going to court, and was he charged? What was he charged with?
So he was charged with armed criminal action and manslaughter. Second degree manslaughter, that's right. So for the second degree manslaughter, he got 3 years, and for the armed criminal action, 6 years. But because it would run concurrent, there would be a total of 6 years versus the 9.
He stayed out on the appeal bond all the way up until about a month ago. Yeah, but that's when they revoked his bond after the appeal courts upheld his conviction. So he's been out since he was found guilty on the appeal bond. Now, the mess that they're trying to do is requesting a pardon from the governor. Yeah.
So what gives them ground to do that? Why would they be able to do something like that? Are they able to do something like that?
They absolutely are able to do that
They can
because
request
the governor, I mean, he can partner,
he
he can partner whoever he desires to. And we know that his wife sent a letter, asking, and I found out she actually had a meeting with Governor Parson as well, requesting him to either give him clemency or a pardon. So right now, right when we think, oh my God, we're getting some form of justice, which is really not justice, it's more accountability because, CD is gone, he's dead. But, right when you have a sense of relief because he's finally locked up, and then you hear this right here, and to know even Governor Parson was just here last week, and he spoke to Devalkenaere's wife was on the radio show, and I really got upset and angry about the interview because in the interview with, I think his name is Pete Mundo, and I don't know the radio station number, but he had given her the platform to say a lot of things, and she really said a lot of things that she should not have said on air. And one of the things that bothers me even right now is the fact that she said that she had my son's medical records and she was disclosing information that was in his medical records. Now, mind you, I'm his mother. And I've never had access to any of his medical records. And even if the prosecuting team, who was representing us, the prosecutors, even if they had, and I know that they did have medical records, they never shared anything with us as far as that's concerned. So for her, and I work for a hospital, and I know about HIPAA violations. So for her to even be on the radio station and talk about my son's medical record, which she should not have had access to, that sounds like that's like she's broken the law. Mm-hmm. So I need to find out who I can speak to in reference to that. But, that was hurtful for me to listen to this interview. You're trying to make my son look bad when my son is the victim and he's not here to speak for himself. But you want to make your husband look like he's up here because he has all of these family members that, were into law enforcement. His dad, retired as a law enforcement, several people in the family. But just because several people in the family was, law enforcement, that don't mean they could have gotten caught up on something criminal as well. Mm-hmm. It's just, they could have done some criminal things, but Devalkenaere actually did something wrong. And we are all human. We make mistakes. You went back there aggressive on December the 3rd before you even went on the scene on college to even try to confront my son. You radioed that you were going to vest up first. And that bothers me still to this day because why would you say that you needed to put your vest on? And I always feel like he went over on that scene, to the scene rather, with the intent for something to happen because your partner didn't radio in that he was in any type of distress or, that I need backup immediately. He had everything under control before Devalkenaere arrived on the scene. So for you to take up the time to get in your vehicle and put on your bulletproof vest, and then you say you needed to get there to save your to help your partner. To me, you didn't even give a damn about your partner because if you gonna take that little extra time to put on a vest, anything could have been going on over at the scene at that time. You don't know if those few seconds, a few moments it took you to vest up, could have been a bad situation. But we know that that was not the case. So I do feel like the Devalkenaere went over to the scene with the intent for something to happen because there was no reason for him to take the time to vest up before he went to the scene.
So this has been a. Oh, go ahead.
One more thing. This is the first time in history of Kansas City where a white officer has been convicted of killing a black person. It's the first time in history of Kansas City, or in the history of this judge for giving up appeals. It's the first time, or it has been unheard of by prosecutors as well as defense attorneys, that the attorney general will side with a convicted person. Now here's a man. This is why he needs to be in jail. Here's a man that's from a family of law enforcement, so he was taught. He know the law. Here's a man that has special training because he was on a special detail. Here's a man that's been a police officer for 20 some odd years. Now here's a man claiming like he didn't know nothing about courage when it came to CD. As well as he was trained, his pedigree say that he did something wrong and he needed to be held accountable. They should have checked his blood and found out what he had in his system. Because that's not no normal way for a highly skilled or highly trained individual to act.
So it's been about 4 years since this, almost 4 years going on since this has happened. How has navigating grief while fighting for justice, how has that impacted your life over these last 4 years? Like, have you been able to grieve at all, would you say?
You most definitely are grieving. You're grieving from the time that you hear about it. And the thing of it is it was such a profound loss, for our family because, this is my son, my husband, even though my son is his stepson, my husband has 3 daughters and I have 2 daughters. Oh, I'm sorry. My husband has 4 daughters and I have 2. So between the both of us, we have 6 girls, and CD was the only boy, that was really that connection there for us. So grieving, I still have not stopped grieving. I've just learned how to, like you say, navigate, do things to kind of deal with, my loss. One of the things that I do is I try to, exercise. I try to eat right. If I feel a moment, and I do have moments off and on all the time, to where there's times, when I feel like I have to cry. And I know that if it gets to that point, that's what I need to do. I need to cry. Shalise and I, we were having a conversation one day. And I think that, one thing that you do when you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, you just think about all of the fond memories, and it's important to talk about it because that's a part of healing when you're dealing with grief. But Shalise and I, we were having a conversation about CD one day, and we were talking and we were laughing about it. But then all of a sudden, I started feeling emotional, and I had to tell Shalise, don't say anymore because I was getting ready to start crying. And even though I know because I have a therapist that I've been seeing since right shortly after. In fact, I was seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist, but I eventually let the psychiatrist go, and I still have my therapist. And wow, I just kind of lost my thought, but you know, just kind of getting, just kind of taking some of the tips that she gives me to deal with my loss and journaling. But Shalise, we were talking, and I was getting really tearful. And like I said, I know that you should cry, but this particular day, I think Shalise was over and she was doing my makeup, and I just told her just to quit talking, let's stop talking about him because I needed to pull back the tears. But it's a healthy thing when you're dealing with grief and you're dealing with a loss, especially, a son and their brother. Um, you just got to do things that is going to be good for you. Be around people that are going to be positive, that that you can communicate with, because that's very important. A lot of times you're going to have people, come to you and say, I don't know what to say because I've never lost. And I mean, what can you say? You can't say anything but just saying that I'm sorry for your loss and being there. That right there, that speaks volume. And we need that. We need that love and that hug and that support. It means a whole lot to know that the people are thinking about you, and that is what you need in your life when you're thinking about, the loss of your loved one.
How would you say, maybe Vanessa or Shalise or Mr. Akil, like how have y'all navigated grieving during this time?
Even when you navigate it,
Honestly, it's still very, very difficult um, with the situation.
Okay.
Well, for me, I feel like it has been very hard for me because I know when everything first happened, I felt like I had to be like strong for them. I felt like I couldn't really let go of everything I was feeling. Like I don't feel like I was able to because I was trying to be like, okay, this is my mom's son. So I know that she was feeling like so bad. So I'm like, okay, I can't be like all mushy and mush, fall apart. So I'm just trying to kind of hold my emotions in a little bit.
Hmm.
I, I tried to find a therapist, but I wasn't able to find one that I felt like could relate to me enough for me to feel comfortable kind of just going over everything because at the time when everything happened, my thoughts were very dark and I was having, like, I didn't feel comfortable saying what I was
Yeah.
even having to deal with my kids. Because this whole process, nobody really, people ask, like, how they're doing, but I don't think people really have talked a lot to the kids, even see these kids,
Hmm.
even though they were really super young when everything was happening, but it was just things with my kids that I had to go through, especially my son when it first happened, because he was having nightmares about killing the police.
Mhm.
And it was hard for me to try and tell him, like, oh, it's gonna be okay, because I didn't feel like that.
Mhm.
Because what am I supposed to tell my son if he's having these bad thoughts about the police when some of them were shared by me because of everything that happened? And it's hard when you losing somebody to a traumatic event. It's hard when you losing somebody to murder. But then it adds on to that when you lose somebody to murder. And it's by somebody who's supposed to protect his family.
Mhm.
And they're supposed to be protecting my brother, but they went in and killed him.
Mhm.
So that was hard for me. I know my daughter, now I've had them see therapists, they've seen people, but I kind of feel like they were reserved too, as far as being able to know what they could say to their therapist. But I know when everything first happened, my daughter, she would call me all day long. Like, I would look at my phone and I would have 30 missed calls. I would have text messages, mama, 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 mama. And I'm like, at first, when it first was happening, I was like, oh, baby, well, I kind of was being lighthearted with it because I really didn't understand. But it was your mom. She kind of pointed out to me, she's like, no, she's probably traumatized from everything that's happened. And that's her way of trying to make sure that you're.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, it's just been a little bit hard trying to deal with everything. Because you hear what everybody is saying about him.
Yeah.
Because when everything first happened, they definitely started pushing out a narrative of everything that wasn't true. I remember I went to my mom after everything happened because everybody else went to the scene. So I'm like, okay, I need to go there to support her. And when I got over there, I just remember sitting out on the porch and seeing the police cars just driving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm like, why are they over here? And then this was probably around lunchtime when I was noticing. And then them not coming over to tell us that he was murdered until 9 o'clock at night. I just felt like I couldn't understand why they would take that long to notify us that that had happened. But I remember when it first happened, I remember Fox 4 was over on the scene and it was somebody recording. And they were talking to one of the police officers who was just like, oh yeah, he put us in a position to where we had to use our fire. That was the first thing that I remember hearing from them. And they were treating him like he was a suspect instead of a victim, which he was.
Mhm.
Because how can you be a suspect in your own murder? You can't murder yourself. Well, I mean, you can, but that's not
That's
what
not the
the
case.
situation.
Yeah.
That's not what the situation was. So I don't know. It's just been a little hard for me. I, usually, I have my clients here, and I kind of discuss things with them just so I can kind of get it off my chest. And I do have a few clients that are like therapists, so they really have helped me when I really couldn't find anyone that I felt comfortable talking to myself. My clients and my friends have been the one who helped me kind of get through.
What about you, Mr. Oh, Vanessa? What did you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm not going to be long. What I will say is it's been very, very difficult for me. Just, I think that if he would have died in a different way, car accident or a health reason, it was, I was still pain, a lot of pain, but it's difficult when a person has been rich in your life, like, and like Shalice was saying, I'm a person who's supposed to protect you. That just it really hits hard. And it's just a void that I feel like I really feel like I died with CD that day. I I just feel empty. And I love I love I love him. And I'm so grateful that I still have him. But CD, he just was a gift. CD, I don't know, he was like that glue or something. And it just is different. It's a void that you feel every day. And I know that CD loved us and he would want for us to be hurt and in pain, and he would want us to live life and be happy. But it's easier said than done. It really is. But I am trying to keep that in mind. And the tough days, because some days I wake up and I feel that I'm going to be okay. But then some days I wake up and I just feel like I'm not. Um, but I try to take things a day at a time. And one of me and CD's last conversation that we had, my birthday was coming up, and he had asked me, what am I going to do for my birthday? And I was like, probably nothing. And he was getting on me about that. He was like, you need to celebrate yourself, like life is, and every day, every year you have life, you need to celebrate yourself. And CD, he was full of life, love life. And when I just had those real dark thoughts, I try to tell myself that I'm still here and things are going to get better. I think that I know since CD is gone, I'm never going to be fully healed because he was my baby brother. Like we grew up together. It's someone who meant the world to me. But I'm just gonna try my best to keep fighting for him. And I feel like every day that I wake up and I get through the day, um, I don't know, I guess that's my way in kind of honoring him because I've had some very dark times to where I didn't want to be here. Like I didn't care. I lived to die. Um, but just knowing that CD's life was taken so short and he very much appreciated life and loved life, it just makes me think like I really need to be like that too because it really is a blessing. And I hope that his story can help other people who might not going through darkness.
I agree. And that's why I wanted to bring light to this because navigating grief is already hard. And then on top of trying to grieve your lost loved one, you're also in the middle of fighting for justice for him. So at every moment when you see an article or you see his Eric's name mentioned, Devalkenaere's name mentioned in the news, it triggers you. Because I know for me initially, I grieved very, very hard and I grieved publicly. But it just didn't work for me. And 2019 was a very mentally challenging year for me as it is. So to seal that with the traumatic passing of him, I was very depressing. I was very depressed. I was suicidal. I had a lot of dark thoughts, and I just buried them. And I think like all of us, we probably navigate grief differently because the thing about healing is it's not linear. So there are some days where you're gonna feel, oh my God, I remember the good time. Cameron was so funny. And then there's other days when you're mad as hell, and when you, especially when you seeing it in the news. And another part that was very triggering, especially for me, was seeing comments, seeing people who don't know him trying to paint this narrative about who he was, what his character was, what happened at that time, and trying to paint Devalkenaere as some kind of savior, saint person that he is not. And so you still have to like fight for justice and be out on the front line. But then how do you grieve? How do you console your kids? And, like keep your mental. It is not, how do you do this? It sounds like the common denominator is talking to somebody. Therapy, that's something that, that's dealing with his death is the last thing that like pushed me into therapy, because mentally you cannot balance all of those thoughts, because I don't think that we're not supposed to experience things like that. Like, how do you navigate that, And Mr. Akil, I don't want to move past you being able to share like how you've been able to navigate during this process.
Well, I want you need to understand, I met CD May 13, 14. That bloodline connection me and CD didn't have. So their take on CD is quite good. Although we built up a bond, we built up a bond, we talked, he would share things with me. He'd get advice from me. And matter of fact, we had made a decision to try to do something together, but I ain't never told him about it. But anyway, he never did get a certification. Because he really got him at the garage. But anyway, but what I have seen happen with my wife and with Celisa Vanessa is that I know for a fact that depended on Steve. So there's times when I know I have to be the one to step up and do the things that's necessary for him. Now, what it has done to my wife is she's a totally different person. I don't care how she try to shake it or tell you that she's been able to cope with it so good. There's things that she used to care about, she don't even care about anymore. Especially when it comes to holidays, certain birthdays, days in which the family used to get together and enjoy it. Those things are not completely enjoyed no more. And you can tell it in her walk through life, her mannerism and things like that. I'm like, let me tell you something. And every single night for, oh Lord, at least a year and a half. Oh, she went to bed, she was on that thing looking at things to see. Every morning when she woke up, she had a CD on. Going through everything. Man, as we try to grieve for something, they won't let you. Because every time you turn around, they're coming up with some more mess about the Devalkenaere, which is going to bring back up the things about what has happened with CD. So, and now, the way I cope with it, I like to stay in my scriptures. That give me so much energy and strength. So that's where I stand. I stay in that my scriptures. Try to talk to them about how great Christ is. And it's hard for somebody to want to hear that when your loved one done been murdered. But I still got to take my stand on that and try to be supportive as I can. And that's where we go through it. That's where I go through it.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that will give you a peace above all understanding, because this situation with Cameron, like I would have never imagined that this is the way that we'll be sitting here talking about him. It makes me emotional. It bothers me still. But one thing that I've had to kind of change my perspective when I'm a believer, and my faith in my faith in Christ has grown tremendously, especially as I've grown older, and I understand life and death in a completely different way. And just as we might not understand the why it had to happen this way, but Cameron's life is not going to be in vain, because it's a legacy now. It's changed the history of the police department in Kansas City, and he's not going to be in vain. Like his story, I hate that it's happened this way, but now we're starting to have conversations, and now we're able to talk about like, how do you navigate? Because a lot of, especially for Black people in America, we deal with injustices all the time where the police will kill you and it's just like just another Black person that's dead. They didn't have any value, but that's not true. And so that's why I wanted to have y'all on to talk about, to make Cameron human, because he is a human, regardless of if he was in the right or the wrong or whatever the case may be. Nobody deserves to be murdered in that way and then disregarded. And now the murderer is going to be wants to be pardoned because his connections, it seems like, I don't know. But I will say, just like navigating grief for people, it does look different. So don't feel that you're behind because you're still angry, because you probably gonna always be angry. And let's just keep it a man. Like you're gonna have moments of sadness, but you really do have to like lean into your faith and know that God is working all things together for the good, regardless of how it turns out, regardless of how it feels. I would encourage, like, therapy is something I have. It's a sacrifice sometimes that I have to do depending on the amount of times that I go. But your mental health is so important, because if you don't address that, you got to have a safe place. You need prayer, yes, but God also gives people tools to help you navigate different emotions, because sometimes prayer ain't gonna fix you ain't gonna fix just everything just because you pray. You still need to know how to deal with those feelings. And so I'm definitely I'm praying for y'all all the time. Cameron, I keep Cameron very close to me, and this is just is a reminder of like who he is. Cameron is loved. He's loved by so many people. He's very gentle spirit, kind hearted, and so that's what we're gonna remember Cameron as, not as the person that Devalkenaere murdered, but the person that Devalkenaere allowed. He put himself in a position to now be a part of history. He on the wrong side of history now, but Cameron's life is not going to be in vain. So I just encourage y'all to keep fighting for justice, keep showing up, stay in your word, stay in your prayer, and get in some therapy and keep that. It's not, because healing is not like, you're not going to reach a checkpoint and say, okay, I'm healed from this. You're going to always learn how to navigate this. Holidays is going to trigger you, especially it happened right before the holidays. And so I know it's not the same. Cameron has children that are going to grow up without their father now, and they won't be able to tell certain stories that, we might be able to experience. But I would just encourage y'all to just keep going, because it's going to be worth it. And again, regardless of if we can see the how or the why now. And I want to thank y'all. I know we're getting close to time. But I definitely want to thank y'all for sharing your story, for sharing Cameron's life with us. And do you have anything going on? How could we support whatever's happening next? What's next? What are the next steps in this process? What are we doing next that we can support you?
Well, Stevie's death date, 40 years, is coming up on December the 3rd. And what we have decided to do is going to be more of a private, but people can join in if they would like. What we have decided to do is we're going to go to Golden Gates Cemetery, and we're going to release 9 balloons. And the 9 balloons that we're going to release, it represents the 9 seconds that it took Devalkenaere to come back and start shooting. So we're going to just spend just a little time out at the cemetery, and then we'll probably just go and have dinner. We did have something else planned initially with the Black Archives, but they're not going to have his documentation. They're not going to have it set up in time for us to have people to meet us there. So we're only going to do the Sunday on his actual anniversary date. So if anyone just wanted to be a part of it, they could reach out to Cam's Gifted Hands at gmail.com just to get a better idea, because right now we really haven't set up a time that we're going to go to the cemetery. Okay. But we do like to honor him by, being there for his birthday and for his death day. Making sure that we do something as a family unit.
Okay, and you mentioned something about the archives. So what's going on with Cameron in the Black Archives of Kansas City?
I'll let my husband tell you that.
Well, by this story being what it is, first time officer killed back there and was convicted in Kansas City history. they put that story in the Black Archives, and they haven't got it set up totally yet, but we had a ceremony at press conference and commemoration of Cameron over at the Black Archives. I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, and so he's going to be in there, just like the history of Kansas City.
Forever.
Yeah, for the history of Kansas City. Cameron's name will be listed in there and the things that happened.
Well,
So the children could go and view it. The family could go and view it. Just like you got things in the Black Archives that happened with Black folk in the history of Kansas City. Cameron's name gonna be.
well, it's a blessing that he has a family that y'all are being bold and stepping up and fighting against injustice. And so I just hope that this conversation encourages others maybe who are dealing with the same thing to speak up, to, don't let your loved ones maybe name be in vain, and fight for injustices. And I mean, we have to, unfortunately, it's just another burden that we as Black people have to fight a little harder to prove that we matter, but we do. And it does make a difference. And so I just thank y'all so much for sharing this time with me to celebrate the life of Cameron and his legacy. One thing that I always kind of leave off with on the episodes, I think about music. So music for me is very healing. And I know Cameron was a really old soul, but I want to ask y'all if all of y'all can tell me like one song that you can think of that maybe it might brighten your spirit or make you think about Cameron, something that he would probably listen to make you laugh, if you can think of anything.
Oh, the sugar hill guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Isley
Hmm.
Brothers and Marvin Gaye. Then he also like Clarence Thomas. I mean, stroking. That's the thing. That's my song. I mean, stroking. That's what it be
Oh my
doing.
goodness. Well, it has,
It would have to be the Sugar Hill Gang. We love the Sugar Hill Gang.
that's so cool. Okay, well, thank y'all so much for spending this time with me and joining and sharing this story. And I hope that, as a result of, being able to share Cameron's story, that we'll continue to like let his name live on, and we'll continue to fight for just the injustices. But until next time, if you guys want to get tuned in with anything that's happening with Cam's Gifted Hands, is his Facebook still up and running? Cam's Gifted Hands, just to stay connected to see what's going on. Yeah, Cam's Gifted Hands. Yeah, just so that way you can just stay plugged in. But it's been an honor, and I'm just so thankful for you guys. But until next time, you can follow Let It Be the Podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Let It Be Podcast, and subscribe. We're on all streaming platforms: YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon. But until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.